Peace world, this is Brother Ali, and you're checking out UKHH.com. Keep it right here.
I'm Iranian, by the way, and the
mashallah.
Tracer just said that you have a song about Iran or something.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
I mean,
she
yeah.
might hate me. Did it go well?
No. Well, I loved Iran. The people that particular organizers that brought me, they did something sneaky. They wanted me to be the first hip hop artist to perform on Iranian television.
Oh,
So
wow.
they had me perform. I went there and I was at this conference and I was only doing acapellas, almost like spoken word poetry.
Yeah.
You know, because I know that hip hop is illegal there.
Yeah.
And so the second day they asked me to perform this song I have called Uncle Sam Goddamn. And they said, well, what would you do with the music? And you know, they said it and people were clapping and like they were all really happy and they got me excited for it. And they had some of the mashayikh there, like the ulama, like the sheikhs there. Mm-hmm. And so I asked their permission and they gave it to me. And so I got up and performed in a room for, there was probably only 100 people there.
Okay.
But almost immediately it was on all of the Iranian television stations.
Wow.
It could, you can only do that if you're connected to the government.
Yeah, for sure.
So they had that plan to do that all along, but they never told me that that's what they wanted me to do.
Oh, wow.
And I think that they were trying to show the people in power that there is hip hop music that they would like and that they would agree with the message of it.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but they, in Cuba, Fidel Castro used to not allow hip hop either for the same reason, just because they don't want Western culture to be there.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't get invaded by a Western country, if you get invaded by Western culture, they'll, the people will become so influenced that they'll demand a Western style government. Because there's a lot of propaganda and things like that. So what Harry Belafonte did in Cuba was that he went to Fidel Castro and he said, will you give these Cuban rappers clemency for a day? And allow them to come and perform safely. And then he went to the rappers and said, this is what I want to do. And he made them part of the planning of it. And he said, and so he brought them together and Fidel changed the rules about hip hop in Cuba. But you're supposed to let the artist know that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I feel you.
So basically, I'm on television, didn't plan to do that. I don't know if they want to jail me or what. I don't know if there's going to be political consequences. So along with that, the hip hop community in Iran, they just see this guy on TV rapping, and I never checked in with them.
And they're a massive community.
Yeah, and they have to do it very secretively.
Yeah.
And so I had to. They started making death threats.
Wow.
And the hotel that I was staying at was on the podium that I was performing at, so they know where I was staying.
Oh my God,
and
that's scary.
Yeah, so I basically said I have to leave, I have to go home.
Oh,
and so I went to the airport and they wouldn't let me change my flight because the person that bought the flight has to change the flight. So then I said, okay, I'll just buy a new flight. Well, my credit card doesn't work in Iran because of the sanctions. And my phone doesn't work in Iran because of the sanctions.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get on the internet and I didn't have money. So I can't, my credit card, even taking money out of the machine, I can't get money out. So I was there for about 3 days with no money, didn't know how I was going to get home.
Wow.
And then finally, they sent somebody to the airport to look for me because they said, if we don't find him, we're going to let the authorities know that there's an American missing in Iran.
Oh my God.
And so I had to go back to them, and then they finally changed the flight for me.
Okay.
And I got to go home. But it was 3 days of, sleeping in the airport.
That is whack.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay, so meanwhile, footage of me spitting these raps is playing on every TV station they had. They jail people for that. The local rappers all start clapping back. Death threats all in my social media apps.
Have you found during your career, because you're so publicly, you're Muslim and you're an activist and stuff, do you reckon it has, you've obviously prospered and you're really successful and you've got a fan base all over the world, but have you found that sometimes it's put pressure on you, or like gatekeepers in the music scene have like shut anything down, or do you reckon, or how do you manage it?
Yeah, I don't manage it. I just do whatever I think I should do in the moment. I do know that there are gatekeepers in the music industry. Yeah. So there was a time when Atmosphere, my label mates, they had an opportunity to cross over and really buy into the mainstream, and they decided not to do it. Around a few years later, it looked like some of those people were looking at me, and that was around the time that Uncle Sam Goddamn, the video came out and went viral. It was one of the first independent music videos to have 1 million views really quickly, and so at that time I was supposed to go on some big tours that were being sponsored by big corporations, and the Department of Homeland Security seized some money from me. And in order for me to get it back, I had to basically give them the information that they would need to track me and spy on me and interfere with me. And so around that time, I was dropped off of those tours, and I had some TV appearances scheduled, and somebody told me that it would be a bad idea to do Uncle Sam Goddamn on TV, and we did it anyway. And then, there were times where, in later parts of my career where I had opportunities to be on TV, and we'd talk to the people at the show, and they would be really excited. And the ideas that we had, I had an idea to basically get some really legendary people, iconic people that were going to be on TV with me. Because I'm not an A-list celebrity, so I thought that would help my chances of getting on these late night TV shows and things. And the people at the program would be really excited about it, and then they would call and say, "Yeah, we're not able to book you, and please don't ask again." And it's like they would happen in New York and LA at the same time.
Right.
And you wonder, like, well, where's that coming from?
Yeah,
why
exactly.
is that? So I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know exactly why. I know that there are other reasons too. Like, I don't look like the people that are in the mainstream music. I don't look like them. Not only because I'm albino, but also they're always very thin, and they always have a certain look, and they always look young.
You look young.
Well, I don't have wrinkles. I don't have wrinkles on my face, but I have a big white beard and
Yeah.
But they're all very thin. You know what I'm saying? I know that too. And they have tattoos, and they dress a certain way and things like that. So I don't know how much of it is my content, and how much of it is just that, and then also right now, my music doesn't sound like the popular music. So I don't know. There's no way really to know how much of it is because of my content and identity, and how much of it is that maybe I'm just not meant for me to be mainstream.
Yeah.
I've known people I've known people when they were underground, and then I've seen them get famous. I've never admired what it does to their heart.
Yeah.
I've never said, like, I wish my heart was more like their heart once they became famous. I've never known a person to really do it. The only famous people that I know that I feel like have never done anything that's not admirable are Cornel West and Chuck D. Those are the famous people that I know that I'm like, I admire everything that you're doing.
Chuck D is a G.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I admire everything about him. There's nothing about Chuck D or the things that he does that I don't completely admire.
Yeah.
But he's one of the he and Cornel West are the only ones that I've just, in terms of being sincere. Yeah. And in terms of, them not hurting other people to get where they're going, to where they need to go. At least that's, I've never seen that in either one of them.
Do you ever feel like, if you do want to try something different, or do you ever feel boxed or categorized in something? Do you feel like if you do fancy changing something, you can? Or how do you reckon your fans would be? Like, do you ever feel boxed in by what your fans expect?
I don't, because I learned very early on that they're not my teachers, and they're not leading me. I'm going where I'm going, and whoever would like to come along comes along.
Yeah, that's dope.
Whoever it speaks to, I'm grateful for whoever it is, because the people that responded in the biggest numbers are not the people that I had in mind when I made my music, and they're not the people that I expected to respond. The largest population of people that respond and buy albums and come to shows are working class and poor white people. All of, and so that's not who I had in mind at first. But I really love and appreciate them, and it's an honor to me that I have the opportunity to serve them, and I do believe I'm serving them. But the way that I serve them is by telling the truth, my truth, and by relating whatever I'm experiencing. And so I've changed many times. I've made a couple of major changes since I've been doing that, music. So I started out making music that was more aggressive. That was a lot about me, wanting to be a great MC and being a very aggressive battle rapper. Like that's what I did in the beginning.
Okay.
And then I changed, and my music got very autobiographical and personal and somewhat emotional. And so that was a major change.
Yeah, I love that though. That's my favorite part.
Thank you. And some people really liked that, and they stayed along with me. But the thing that I do is I still perform some of the aggressive songs, the MC type songs.
How you feel like? It depends what you feel like, right?
Yeah, but I still perform them at the show.
Okay.
So if people like those songs, but they don't like the more personal, intimate songs, I do both at the show.
Right.
Then I started making more overtly political music.
Right.
And some people didn't like that. Some people liked that the most. And then my newest music is more spiritually motivated, and some people like that. Some people. But at the concert, I still do all of them. And I didn't feel like every time I made those shifts, it's because I had shifted as a person, and what I wanted to spend my time talking about was that, So there was a time when I first came out, I just wanted people to know that I could rhyme, and I wanted to be accepted as an MC.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to talk about.
That was the show and proves
Right.
part of rap.
Yeah. And then there was a while where I went through things in my life, and I'm like, well, what good is this if I can't talk about what I'm doing in my life? And then I started having a room full of people every day around the world, and let's talk about what we can do together about the condition of the world. And then I started realizing that we can build power, but if we don't do something about our hearts, part of what the people in power, this world that we live in, it really impacts our hearts in really negative ways. And we're all in a lot of trauma. We all have a lot of healing to do. We all have a lot of challenge with our ego. And so if we've been shaped by this environment, so if we only work on power, and if we all we're thinking about is gaining power, then when we get power, but we don't correct our hearts, and we don't heal, and we don't get back to some native, more original way of being and living and understanding and working with each other as some sort of, really beautiful state with each other, where it becomes easy to love each other, forgive each other, support each other, see the best in each other. Then if we get power, we'll just be the new oppressors. We'll just imitate the people that what we saw power look like. If we don't redefine what power is through some sort of spiritual way of doing that. So that's what I started working on with myself and pursuing. And so when I get on the mic, that's what I'm going to talk about. So no, I never felt like if I do this, then they won't follow me, because I learned really early from Atmosphere and from Public Enemy and others that they're listening to us because of the fact that we are driven by what's in our heart and not by what's popular in the world. So I made a political album about America 5 years ago when Obama was still the president. It would have made much more sense to do that now.
Right. But that was your truth then.
That's
of what
where I
going
was
on.
then.
That's really beautiful, and that really, what you just said, really resonates with me so deeply, even on a personal level right now. So I feel like that was just almost a manifestation of so many thoughts that I've just had, and you've just like in a paragraph summed it up. So I actually really appreciate that. So thank you.
I thank God for healing. You ain't gotta get me lit, I got my own light. Thank God for listening. Listen, you've been trying to build me up my whole life. I thank God for building.
So one of the questions that one of your fans had asked was that even like hearing you speak right now is if you connect or resonate with Sufism as opposed to Islam, or do you see it as kind of one whole thing or separate things?
Well, for 1,000 years, or longer than that, from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, until maybe 150 years ago, it was understood that Islam, the religion, was understood in three, or some would even say four spheres of knowledge. Towards the end of the Prophet's life, peace be upon him, a man came and sat with him and asked him 4 questions. He said, "What is Islam? What does it mean to submit outwardly?" And he talked about the code, the sacred code, or the Sharia of like how we live life. And Sharia just means a sacred code of conduct. That certain things are, there has to be limits, to the things that we do. And all human beings have a code of conduct.
Yeah.
The people that say, well, like, no, we're just about freedom and there shouldn't be any restrictions. Okay, well then, I'll just take your car.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can't take my car. That's off limits.
Everyone's got
wait,
their
I thought it was
boundary,
freedom.
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about freedom? Or can I just walk up and grab any woman that looks good to me? Well, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody believes that there has to be limits.
You've got a code.
But I want to. But you know what I'm saying? Women look good. You know what I mean? You can't do that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you can't do that. So everybody's got limits, It's just, where are these limits going to come from? In the modern world, we make them up, and they change as often as we change. So they're always changing, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's one of the big problems that's happening in the entertainment industry right now, is that for years the rules of that industry were, if you want to be an actor and I have power, you have to have sex with me. Those were the rules for years, for 100 years in the music industry. And now people are realizing, they're like, that's not okay. You know what I mean? So people that were doing that for all that time, those were the rules. And now we're starting to look and say, like, that's not right.
Yeah.
So we change the rules now. That's what the modern world does.
Yeah.
Because we've given up virtues. Virtues are timeless universals. We've given that up, and we've given up everything sacred in the name of ideals. And ideals, first of all, will never be realized, because this world is not ideal. But then also, the ideal changes with our whims, So we have a sacred code of conduct for the outward life. Then the second question that this man asked the Prophet Muhammad is, what is Iman, or what does it mean to believe? And then the Prophet gave him an answer, and it basically deals with the right understanding of life and the right knowledge of the nature of existence, of creation. So this deals with things like, what is a human being, and what is the value of a human being? What is nature, and what does it mean? How do these things work? And then the third question he asked is, what is ihsan, or what is excellence? And the answer was, what real spiritual excellence is to always be in a state where we are as if we can see the Creator. We can see the divine. We see God. And even if we don't see God, we always know that God sees us. So it's to be constantly present with the divine, and never mindless or heedless about the divine. And then the fourth question was like, tell me about the time that we live in. But it was understood for the entire history of Islam that those 3 things were the 3 spheres of Islam. And they gave a name to each one. So fiqh, or sharia, for the outward law, aqidah or kalam, for the beliefs of Islam, and then tasawwuf, or Sufism, or spirituality, for the inner state, for how to get the heart right. So 2 things happen. there was a movement that started in Saudi Arabia, as you know. There was a teacher, and also for 1200 of the 1400 years of Islamic history, it was understood that there would be different methodologies for understanding and describing and even deriving rulings for those three things. So that there were going to be, in Sunni Islam, there were going to be four major ways of interpreting the law. And they would come up with different rulings.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and they had their own methodology. And so some of them would say that if a dog touches you, you have to wash and change your clothes before you pray.
Right.
That's the Shafi'i school. The Malikis will say, well, no, the people in Medina that lived with the Prophet Muhammad, they had dogs. And they didn't wash and change their clothes before they prayed. So they would derive different rulings. And all of the Maliki scholars would say the Shafi'i scholars used a valid method of interpreting that. And so their opinion is valid. We have a different opinion. And that was true in all of these different areas of Islam. So what happened in Saudi Arabia is that there was a teacher named Ibn Abdul Wahhab who said there's one way of interpreting Islam. All of these different schools and these different methodologies, they're all just invented by, these are all just made up by people. I have the one way of interpreting Islam. And then they made an alliance with the Saud family, who wasn't controlling Saudi Arabia. They controlled this little section called Nejd, like a little town, a little area in Saudi Arabia, in Arabia at that time. And they made an alliance where he said, if Saud will be the political side of this, and we'll make Wahhabism the state religion. Okay. And then Wahhabism would sanctify the Saudi regime. And they made this alliance. The scholars in Islam before that, they would never were aligned with the political leadership. So you had the political leaders, the amirs and the khalifa and things like that. Except for the first 4 or 5 khulafa, the scholars were never in agreement with them. And even the first 4, the Shiite scholars weren't in agreement with them. You know what I mean? And so the religious leaders and the political leaders were never buddies. Yeah. Like this idea of a theocracy, this idea that like organized religion, the state and the scholars, they're always this is not real. Yeah. And so, this was one of the first times that this happened. And then the British and the US backed them and helped them overthrow the Ottoman Empire, which is an entire empire of Sufism. I mean, these are the people of Rumi. Yeah. These are the people, and the Persians played a big role in that. And Persia wasn't always all Shiite either. But the Shiites, they never separated Sufism or Tasawwuf from Islam. It's this new movement that separated Sufism from Islam.
Yeah, because for me, it's like a big part of it. I think it's such a
It's central. It's the heart.
Yeah, exactly.
And some people will say it's the heart, and some people will say it's the crown. Like when you get to spiritual realization, that's when you're really arriving. Yeah.
In my head, I guess I'll never learn. They tell me I should let it bleed, let it sting, let it burn. Get my head firm.
Your new project, I was going to ask you, and I know you're performing tonight to our London town, to our hometown. What is your favourite song of your project and why?
That's very difficult, but probably, I would say probably the song called They Can't Take That Away. Because that song, first of all, the person that I wrote it for is just really, really dear and beloved to me. And the fact that like when that song touches people, it's a reflection of the love that I have for the person and I have that I wrote it for. And then also, I think it just embodies the spirit that of the album. Just the idea of pure, unconditional love that is undefined. You know what I mean? Some people would say like, oh, that song must be about his wife. And some people say, well, that song must be about this person or that person. And it's really undefined. Like there's there's no limits around what kind of love we're talking about.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of Rumi in a way.
Absolutely.
With the Shams of Tabriz and Rumi, and that kind of, what is the divine love? Who is this? The beauty that he's talking about.
Right. Because there are people that'll say, well, Shams and Rumi were lovers.
Yeah, but.
And they were lovers.
But
were they?
Yeah, I feel like it's a different.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
essence.
That's
like,
right.
So yeah,
that's right.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that it's undefined because you can give it your own. I guess, like you said, your own reflection of what you take from a song like that and project it as well. So that's kind of dope.
Because it's unfortunate that in English we only really have one word for love, or two or three. You know, we have love, we have adore, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, most languages have many words for love. You know, especially Persian, like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, it's a bit much sometimes. It's almost like, oh, I want to take your kidney out of your mouth and squish it.
Right.
Yeah, there's a bit like, but that's my mum telling me she loves me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, beautiful love language. Like yeah, and so we've really, this modern society that we live in, it's very reductionist. They've reduced everything to the most. Just the most, you know, they've reduced it to, I would say, the most impotent, neutered version of everything. Everything is just the smallest, most shallow, kind of hollow version of what it can mean, you know. So if you tell somebody, I love you, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So if I was to say, I love you, I love you, you would think, oh, does he trying to marry me? Is he trying to be my boyfriend? You know what I'm saying? Or if you tell one of your friends, like if I tell one of my brothers, I'm so in love with you, you know, we feel some sort of need to qualify for that. Not in a gay way. You know what I'm saying?
So true.
Not in a gay way. Like I have to limit that.
Yeah. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you.
Or like if we cry, we apologize.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People, like, if we're sitting here talking and something comes up, you know what I mean? And somebody starts crying, they'll say, like, I'm sorry. Like, why would you apologize for crying?
For a feeling. Like,
you know what I mean? For like a genuine show of emotion, you know? Or somebody starts crying and we're, shh, it's okay.
It's okay.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
You're making me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially with men, man, that's a big problem with guys as well.
Yeah, it's a big problem. But then also, you know, unfortunately, I think we've projected that onto women so much, so you know, vehemently, that now women, you know, apologize for it. You know, to say like, I'm sorry, maybe I'm just being emotional. But so, well, what do you mean? Don't apologize for being emotional.
Yeah.
That's what makes us human.
Well, we need more men to enable this openness as well.
And the that's the thing about the Sufis is that like they really are. And then you start talking about Sufis, you have to be careful. You have to say like, what do you mean by that? Because there are people that they call goofy Sufis.
Oh really? I've never heard that term.
Well, I mean, yeah. So that's basically there are certain people that like when you know people of genuine and like legitimate spiritual chains of spiritual lineage that are inheritors of that. You start to see that there are a lot of people that are frauds. You know what I mean? Just like in anything else.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I learned my hip hop directly from Rakim and Chuck D and Atmosphere. So that's where my hip hop comes from. And if I do something out of whack, those people are gonna check me for that. You know what I mean?
They're the best people to check you.
Yeah, but then there's people just out here you know, claiming hip hop, and it's like, well, what's your lineage? Who checks you? Where are you getting that from? You know what I mean? And the same thing with, and you see those people doing all kind of stuff. White people doing cultural appropriation, or you know, people out here just calling women all kind of names and just making, you know, they say, well, like, where's your link? Because even Two Live Crew, Luke Skywalker was on tour with Chuck D. He had to look like Too Short had to look Chuck D in the eye, and they both had to be okay with what they were doing. You know, the gangster rappers at that time, they were on tour with Chuck D. And so Scarface and Ice-T, they're friends. And if you listen to their music, they tell you about the street, but they tell you about the downside of it. They're not just glorifying crime. You know, so and even even Two Live Crew, they had respect for the Nation of Islam and Minister Farrakhan and Black Power and all that stuff. Like they always had limits. Again, back to limits, but they now you have these people that have no link to the hip hop community. The same is true for Islam. These people so in the Sufi world, you got these goofy Sufis that'll be like.
It's so funny.
Yeah, no, it's real. I mean,
that's crazy.
And some of them will pretend to be a sheikh, and he's not really a sheikh, and so he'll make you serve him, and he'll treat you like a servant, and then maybe he's trying to have sex with the young girls, and like that's a real thing. Or people that are like, if you give me money, I'll pray for you, and but the real ones, they teach you how to love, and they teach you how to they help you with your heart to make it easy to forgive people, make it easy, like you incline towards forgiving people, you incline towards loving people, you incline towards seeing the best in people, you incline towards serving, make you love serving, you know what I mean? I wish I could be the one to cook for you, and you know what I mean?
That's beautiful. So that's Can't Take That, what was it called?
Can't Take That Away.
Can't Take That Away. Okay, cool. We're gonna go bang that. But big up, thank you so much. I could literally talk to you all day.
Yeah,
but obviously there's other people waiting to do interviews. So
sorry for the time.
thank you. No. It's been really nice. It's been like a conversation. We're just missing some Persian tea. But
Right.
it's been just like a nice conversation, basically. Thank you for your time.
Cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
They can't take that away. They can't take that away. When your world start falling, I can read about it all in your face. You ain't even gotta say, they can't take that away. They can't take that away.